Site. Location.
The newly married couple selected the site for their new home with meticulous care.
Vigil. Wakeful watching.
The hunter maintained a discreet and wary vigil, as he waited for the propitious moment to bag his quarry.
Cumbersome. Unwieldy, burdensome.
With rancor, he faced the cumbersome job of transporting the voluminous records to his new office.
Interrogate. Question.
Before they began to interrogate the criminal, they had to admonish him that his testimony might be used to incarcerate him.
Divulge. Disclose, reveal.
Even under duress, he was adamant and would not divulge the secret.
To take a leaf out of someone's book. To imitate or follow the example.
The chip off the old block took a leaf from his father's book and never sowed wild oats.
Another plan. Robert was far from tranquil as he waited in the lobby, for almost an hour after the performance had begun. Disgruntled, he quit the site of his vigil. He had to face the fact that he was making no tangible progress. Tomorrow he would telephone several women's residences. It was a cumbersome way of going about the hunt, but it was all that he could think of at the moment. He would interrogate the desk clerks, and perhaps he might uncover a pertinent clue to Evelyn's whereabouts. If he could only get someone to divulge her hiding place. Perhaps tomorrow would culminate in success.
Week 34, Day 2. Fluctuate. Shift, alternate.
The current trend in the stock market is for stocks to fluctuate in a sporadic fashion.
Unmitigated. Unrelieved, as bad as can be.
He wasn't exactly an unmitigated liar, he merely embellished the truth a little.
Commodious. Large, spacious.
In his sumptuous house, he had a commodious den, in which he kept an array of trophies, as incontrovertible evidence of his skill.
Antiquated. Out of date, obsolete.
Is it banal to say that good manners are antiquated in our milieu?
Disheveled. Disorderly clothing or hair.
The nondescript, indolent beggar was in a disheveled condition.
Brass tacks. The real problem or situation.
After some moments of congenial levity, they got down to brass tacks.
A hope dashed. The next day, Wednesday, saw Robert become more frustrated. He would fluctuate between high hopes of finding Evelyn and unmitigated despair, when he was almost ready to desist in his search. The phone calls had elicited almost nothing. Robert had rushed to one women's residence, when the clerk described a girl, who might just be Evelyn. The desk clerk phoned to her room on the pretext that she had a special delivery letter. Robert waited in the commodious lobby, replete with large, antiquated pieces of furniture. He watched from a discreet distance, as she came down the stairs. One look at her wan face, slovenly dress, and disheveled hair was enough to inform Robert that he needed no further scrutiny. This could not be his impeccable Evelyn.
Week 34, Day 3. Tenacious. Tough, stubborn.
He held on to his antiquated beliefs with a tenacious obsession.
Facade. Front, superficial appearance.
His face wore the most doleful facade.
Asinine. Silly, stupid.
How asinine of the boy to fabricate that bizarre story.
Grimace. Facial expression of disgust.
She could not abjure a grimace when she saw the disheveled figure.
Calumny. False accusation, slander.
The woman was noted for her vituperative calumny against her innocuous, although senile, neighbor.
Hook, line, and sinker. Completely, all the way.
The teacher fell for the practical joke hook, line, and sinker.
To the police. Thursday was his next to last day. He had been tenacious in following up every lead. Now he was behind the 8 ball. He could hardly galvanize himself to do anything else. The facade of hope he had worn for almost a week was crumbling. There was nothing left to be sanguine about. In desperation he turned to the police, and placed his problem within their jurisdiction. They asked many questions, and they requested that he not expurgate anything. Some of the questions seemed asinine. When they inquired about his relationship to the missing girl, he replied, with a grimace, fiancé. When they suggested she might be hiding in that part of the city where the punk coterie congregated, he was incredulous and accused the police of calumny against her good name and reputation.
Week 34, Day 4. Pittance. Small amount.
The tip he had been offered was a mere pittance, and the taxi driver threw it on the ground in disdain.
Au courant. Up to date.
Styles are such transient things that what is au courant today is archaic tomorrow.
Fastidious. Particular, choosy.
He was so fastidious about table manners that he lost his equanimity when his son reached for the bread.
Noisome. Foul, unwholesome.
It was inevitable that they discover the hidden body by its noisome aroma.
Unkempt. Untidy, neglected.
Children think mothers are asinine to get upset about unkempt rooms.
Lily-livered. Cowardly.
The lily-livered gangster got cold feet and spilled the beans.
Evelyn discovered. Failure was imminent, and Robert was bereft of hope. It was now Friday. Despite his abstemious and parsimonious way of living, his money had been reduced to a mere pittance. A perverse impulse brought him to the section where young people in strange clothing and with uncouth manners made him recoil in unmitigated disgust. He had never been au courant with the hippies and punks. He was always fastidious about proper dress and behavior. A moment later he saw her. Evelyn. She was sitting at a table in a coffee shop, surrounded by a coterie of the most noisome individuals he had ever seen. Evelyn was not incongruous, for she herself was unkempt. So this was her new habitat. At that instant Robert knew as an incontrovertible fact that he had lost her. With a grimace, he turned and walked, a doleful and melancholy figure, toward the bus depot and home.
Week 35, Day 1. Parable. A moralistic story.
The expression, sour grapes, is the gist of a famous parable about a fox who couldn't get what he wanted.
Whimsical. Humorous, witty.
What one person finds whimsical, the other may find asinine.
Lampoon. Ridicule.
Jonathan Swift was never reticent to lampoon the egotist, in order to bring him down with alacrity.
Countenance. Tolerate, approve.
If we want to live in a salubrious milieu, we cannot countenance the noisome fumes that are deleterious to health.
Sanctimonious. Hypocritically religious.
We should eschew our sanctimonious facade, away with pretext.
To pull up stakes. To quit a place.
He could no longer rule the roost, or get the lion's share, so he pulled up stakes and moved on.
A modern Aesop. The telling of a story in simple terms, that has an inherently important message is a venerable art form. The parable may be found teaching a moral lesson in the Bible. Aesop is an incontrovertible master of the fable. This story form is far from antiquated as shown by the whimsical approach to life taken by the modern Aesop, James Thurber. His stories lampoon the strange behavior of his fellow men. Thurber seems unable to countenance the ideas that permeate our society regarding the rules by which we should live. Least of all is he able to accept the sanctimonious notion that some people promulgate that good always wins out against evil. Thurber's stories often take an exactly opposite point of view.
Week 35, Day 2. Equanimity. Calmness, self-control.
These turbulent times require a leader who does not go into a capricious pique, but rather one who faces acrimonious criticism with equanimity.
Effrontery. Boldness.
Do you have the effrontery to take that supercilious and facetious attitude towards something as sinister as this?
Nonentity. One of no importance.
He was a precocious youngster, but he soon reached the nadir of his career, lost all of his prestige, and became a nonentity.
Flabbergasted. Astounded.
When the judge exonerated the charlatan, we were all flabbergasted.
Debacle. Ruin, collapse.
The fortuitous appearance of a relief column permitted an adroit escape from the imminent debacle.
To raise Cain. To cause trouble, make a fuss.
When he found he was left holding the bag, he decided to raise Cain.
Modernizing a parable. Thurber punctures in an incisive way the platitudes that come from stories handed down through the generations. These old saws are accepted by everyone. One such tale is about a tortoise who had read in an ancient book that a tortoise had beaten a hare in a race. The sage old tortoise construed this story to mean that he could outrun a hare. With equanimity he hunted for a hare and soon found one. Do you have the effrontery to challenge me? Asked the incredulous hare. You are a nonentity, he scoffed at the tortoise. A course of 50 feet was set out. The other animals gathered around the sight. At the sound of the gun they were off. When the hare crossed the finish line, the flabbergasted tortoise had gone approximately 8 3/4 inches. The moral Thurber draws from this debacle for the tortoise: a new broom may sweep clean, but never trust an old saw.
Week 35, Day 3. Vivacious. Lively, gay.
They were struck by the anomaly of one twin, who was phlegmatic while the other was vivacious.
Gaunt. Thin, haggard.
Women strive for the slender and courant gaunt look.
Mean. Appearance, bearing.
She had a mien of humility, but it was only a facade.
Hirsute. Hairy.
You may have discerned that it is no longer the latest vogue among boys to permit their faces to become hirsute.
Refute. Prove wrong or false.
He did not waste time trying to refute an irrelevant and tortuous argument.
To leave no stone unturned. To try one's best, to make every effort.
Since you're from Missouri, I'll leave no stone unturned to convince you.
Things have changed. Thurber modernizes an old story that everyone has read or heard. It has to do with a nefarious wolf who kept a vigil in an ominous forest until a little girl came along carrying a basket of food for her grandmother. With alacrity, this vivacious youngster told the wolf the address to which she was going. Hungry and gaunt, the wolf rushed to the house. When the girl arrived and entered, she saw someone in bed wearing a nightcap and a nightgown. While the figure was dressed like her grandmother, the little girl surmised with only a perfunctory glance that it didn't have the old lady's mien. She approached and became cognizant of the hirsute face of the wolf. She drew a revolver from her purse and shot the interloper dead. Thurber arrives at a moral for this story that anyone would find difficult to refute. It is not so easy to fool little girls nowadays as it used to be.
Week 35, Day 4. Pensive. Thoughtful, reflective.
The fervid marriage proposal made the shy girl pensive.
Wet. Stimulate, stir up.
You cannot whet his desire for the theater with dubious histrionics.
Stupor. Daze, insensible condition.
He was in such a stupor as a result of the accident, that this precluded his hearing my condolence.
Wince. Draw back, flinch.
The hostile rebuke made the usually phlegmatic boy wince.
Cliché. A commonplace phrase.
If you juxtapose one cliché with another, you often get completely opposite lessons about life.
Tongue in one's cheek. Not to be sincere.
John's father surely had his tongue in his cheek when he told his son to go sow wild oats and to kick over the traces at his kindergarten party.
Another surprise. Thurber's stories are written in a jocose manner, but they contain enough serious matter to make one pensive. He tells of some builders who left a pane of glass standing upright in a field, near a house they were constructing. A goldfinch flew across the field, struck the glass and was knocked inert. He rushed back and divulged to his friends that the air had crystallized. The other birds derided him, said he had become irrational, and gave a number of reasons for the accident. The only bird who believed the goldfinch was the swallow. The goldfinch challenged the large birds to follow the same path he had flown. This challenge served to whet their interest, and they agreed with gusto. Only the swallow abjured. The large birds flew together and struck the glass, they were knocked into a stupor. This caused the astute Swallow to wince with pain. Thurber drew a moral that is the antithesis of the cliché we all accept: he who hesitates is sometimes saved.
Week 36, Day 1. Genre: a certain form or style in painting or literature.
Modern abstract painting is a highly lucrative genre.
Candid: frank, open, honest.
In my candid opinion, he is a sanctimonious fool.
Unsavory: disagreeable, offensive, morally bad.
It is reprehensible, but it doesn't require much gossip to give a person an unsavory reputation.
Degrade: make contemptible, lower.
Harry held the fallacious belief that the menial job would degrade him in the eyes of his friends.
Venial: pardonable, forgivable.
Betty's childish fabrications were judged venial sins, although they mortified her mother.
Keep a stiff upper lip. Keep up courage, stand up to trouble.
When he heard through the grapevine that the fat was in the fire, he knew he had to keep a stiff upper lip, so as not to spill the beans.
A lady novelist. The 19th century saw the woman novelist attain the same prestige as men. England was prolific in producing women writers. One of the foremost in this genre was Charlotte Brontë. In Jane Eyre, she presented a candid portrait of a woman caught up in a clandestine affair with a married man. Miss Brontë's readers were engrossed in this story. She took this unsavory subject and presented it in a way that did not degrade the relationship. She showed that true passion can be healthy. Miss Brontë did not disparage Jane's feelings or besmirch her character. The author was generous in her verdict. The affair was considered merely a venial sin, because Jane was never false in her feelings or her actions.
Week 36, Day 2. Epitome: person or thing that embodies or represents the best.
The Taj Mahal in India is said to be the epitome of grace as an edifice.
Dexterity: mental or physical skill.
With dexterity, he thwarted the pugnacious and belligerent adversary.
Grotesque: strange, bizarre, fantastic.
He was made up in the most grotesque way, for his role as a man from outer space.
Compassion: sympathetic feeling, kindness.
We all felt deep compassion for the innocent progeny, who were bereft of their parents, who had succumbed during the conflagration.
Repugnant: distasteful, repulsive.
The sight of the corpse was repugnant to the squeamish onlookers.
To throw the book at someone. To give the maximum punishment.
The judge got his back up and threw the book at the criminal.
Victor Hugo. The epitome of French Romantic writers in the 19th century was Victor Hugo. With the utmost dexterity he wrote poetry, novels, and drama. His highly popular novels, Notre Dame de Paris and Les Miserables, are replete with melodramatic situations and grotesque characters. He had a profound sense of social justice and a compassion for the poor, hapless, and downtrodden. He could not work under the aegis of Napoleon III and fled into exile. When the repugnant rule came to an end, the expatriate returned. He was received with adulation and acclaim, as the idol of the Third Republic.
Week 36, Day 3. Acme. Peak, pinnacle, zenith.
At the acme of his power, the dictator was obsessed with the belief that those who dissented were trying to usurp his position.
Copious. Ample, abundant, plentiful.
She lost her decorum and wept copious tears at the poignant story.
Vehemently. Violently, eagerly, passionately.
He objected vehemently to a vote taking place in the absence of a quorum.
Depict. Describe clearly, picture, portray.
As a perspicacious newspaper reporter, he felt it incumbent upon him to depict the abortive coup as a reprehensible act.
Naive. Unworldly, unsophisticated.
The urbane gentleman was flabbergasted by the fervid interest in wrestling shown by the naive young girl.
Terra firma. Solid, firm land.
The rough ocean crossing took the wind out of his sails, and he was happy to be on terra firma again.
An English realist. The movement toward realism in the English novel of the 19th century reached its acme with the works of Charles Dickens and William Makepeace Thackeray. Charles Dickens was a prolific writer. Among his copious works are Oliver Twist, a candid exposure of the repugnant poor laws; Nicholas Nickleby, in which the life of boys in a boarding school is vehemently attacked; Hard Times, in which the author wanted to depict the infamous life in a factory during an early period of the Industrial Revolution; The Pickwick Papers, about a naive gentleman who has numerous misadventures. The novels, aimed at exposing the sordid and pernicious elements of English life, were said to have helped galvanize people into action, leading to improvement in these conditions.
Week 36, Day 4. Perfidious. Treacherous, false.
They made an effigy of their perfidious enemy.
Covet. Want, envy, wish.
A favorite parable has to do with teaching the lesson that one should not covet that which belongs to someone else.
Ingratiate. Win confidence, charm.
Under the aegis of a zealous campaign manager, the candidate was able to ingratiate herself into the hearts of the public.
Penury. Poverty.
His fortune fluctuated between penury and wealth.
Ignominious. Humiliating, disgraceful.
There was bedlam as the favored team went down to ignominious defeat at the hands of the underdog.
In seventh heaven. The highest happiness or delight.
The oldest child was in seventh heaven when her mother let her rule the roost for a day.
A scheming heroine. William Makepeace Thackeray was known for his moralistic study of upper and middle-class English life. His best-known work, Vanity Fair, has as its central character Becky Sharp. She is a perfidious woman who has an insatiable desire to get ahead in the world. She covets the wealth of one man, but when marriage is not feasible she succeeds in a plan to ingratiate herself into the heart of her employer's son. Their marriage is not a salubrious one, and Becky, who lives ostentatiously, forms a surreptitious liaison with another man. The affair culminates in a debacle. She is exposed, her husband leaves her, and she must live in penury in Europe. This is the ignominious end for a clever, but misguided woman.
Week 37, Day 1.